The movie starts by showing a cute house in Brightburn. Kyle and Tori are having sex in their bed. Kyle is confident that this time he will get her pregnant, but Tori is sick of wishing and just wants to have fun. Tori notices an unexpected tremble and stands to have a look, but it soon stops and then suddenly a crash shakes their entire house. Outside their window, they see a bright red light in the distance. They have been blessed with a son named Brandon as a result of the incident. 10 years later, we see Tori checking Brandon's room to get him ready for school, but she discovers it to be empty. They play hide and seek daily. Tori whistles to get an idea of where he is hiding. Brandon whistles back, making fun of Tori for being too far from his hiding place. Brandon's voice leads her to their barn. She thoroughly searches the hay bales but is unable to find him. Brandon then leaps at her, and Tori laughs at his prank. She gives Brandon a hug and tells him that she will always love him. When Kyle meets them outside, he warns Brandon about the barn's rules. At school, Brandon's teacher asks him a question regarding bees and wasps. He replies quickly, saying that wasps are predators while bees are pollinators. He goes on to mention policed sulcifer, a species that is no longer able to build nests, and is dependent on other species to raise its young. One of his classmates, Royce, makes fun of him for giving useless information. The entire class laughs, except for Caitlin. She then consoles him by saying that intelligent men like him govern the world, and both exchange smiles. That night, Tori checks on Brandon and then prepares to paint. Suddenly, a red light pulses from the barn, and Brandon begins seizing in his room. When Tori hears a disturbance, she stops painting, but Brandon's seizures stop, so she resumes. Brandon wakes up and exits his window, causing Tori to hear a loud thud. She looks outside to make sure nothing is wrong. When she turns around, she feels someone running behind her. She searches past her drying clothes and catches a glimpse of Brandon's back, who vanishes. In the distance, Tori notices the barn and goes there to look for him. She finds him aggressively attempting to open chain trapdoors while muttering odd words. Tori repeatedly calls for him, but he doesn't answer. She then reaches out to touch him. He slowly looks at her and then jumps in shock. Tori comforts him and says that he is sleepwalking, but Brandon claims he heard weird voices. She quickly dismisses this and takes him back to bed. When Kyle comes to check on them, Tori lies to him, saying that Brandon merely slept and walked downstairs. The next day, Kyle tells Brandon that he had difficulties when they first adopted him. When Tori leaves Kyle and Brandon alone, Brandon feels lost, and Kyle calms him down with candy. Kyle then gives him the task of mowing the lawn. When the machine doesn't start quickly, Brandon gets very angry and throws the machine across the yard. He is shocked by his strength. The lawnmower is upside down, and the blades are spinning deadly fast. A voice whispers in his ears, and he puts his hand into the blades. The machine's blades are damaged, but his hand remains unharmed. To celebrate Brandon's 12th birthday, the family gathers in a diner with Marilee, Tori's sister, and her husband, Noah. Marilee, who is Brandon's school counselor, praises his intelligence, and as a reward, Noah gifts Brandon a hunting weapon for his birthday. Kyle confiscates the gun because he is not old enough. When Brandon's arguments are ignored, he slams his fist on the table and demands Kyle give him the gun. As the arcade screens flicker out, they stare at the commotion. Kyle abruptly calls an end to their party due to Brandon's behavior. When he doesn't stand up, Kyle grabs him. Tori then convinces him to listen to Kyle. The waitress, Erica, then watches them as they depart. At home, Kyle and Tori discuss the changes in Brandon's behavior. Tori then reminds him of their teenage years, when their parents didn't care about them. She then pledges to treat Brandon better. Kyle agrees and suggests that tomorrow they'll go camping to relax. Tori asks Brandon to put on his jacket as they get dressed, but he ignores her and keeps eating his food. When Kyle goes to check on him, he discovers Brandon chewing his fork strangely. Brandon gasps in surprise when he wakes up and notices the twisted fork in his hand. Meanwhile, when Tori goes to find his jacket in his room, she discovers photographs under Brandon's bed. She shows the pictures to Kyle, and they flip through the pictures of nude women, up until they start seeing images of human organs. They learn about Brandon's idea of entertainment. They get very disturbed and decide to talk to him. While out hunting, Kyle discusses sex with Brandon and how it's not just physical but also about love. He softly reminds him of the importance of self-love by saying that it's normal to give in to cravings. Brandon misinterprets it for a different urge, and Kyle awkwardly ends the conversation. At Caitlin's house, she is startled awake by music coming from her laptop. She gets out of bed and closes her laptop. She turns back to sleep, but music starts playing once again. She gets scared and hurriedly closes her laptop again while placing many notes on top. She then feels someone approaching and turns to the window, calling her mom, Erica, right away. Erica bursts through the door, making Caitlin scream. She frantically points towards the window and claims someone is there, but Erica is unable to find anyone. Erica tries to calm her down and realizes that it was Brandon Breyer at Caitlin's window. When Tori discovers Brandon is missing, she desperately searches the woods for him. He appears behind her and tells her that he merely went to pee. At school, Tori consults Marilee about Brandon's behavior at the diner. Tori is relieved when Marilee tells her it's only puberty. She then finds Brandon doodling symbols, but he quickly covers it up. Kyle hears the chickens being disturbed at the barn in the middle of the night. He thinks it's a wolf, so he takes a rifle, but instead he discovers Brandon. He does nothing but watch ominously as the chicken panics. It's late, so Kyle scolds Brandon and takes him home. Kyle wakes up after a short sleep to discover the chicken's dead. He shows Tori the chicken coop and blames Brandon for it, explaining what happened earlier. She doesn't believe him, even when he says that a wolf couldn't open a lock. Brandon and his classmates are practicing a trust circle at school. When it's Brandon's turn, Caitlin lets him fall to the ground, and their classmates laugh at him. She calls him a pervert and refuses to help him. But when their coach threatens to fail her, she offers to help Brandon. He yells at Caitlin and grabs her hand. She cries as he squeezes her hand until it is crushed. Following the event, the sheriff and the parents of Brandon and Caitlin meet in the principal's office. Brandon's treatment of her daughter has infuriated Erica, who wants him to be put in jail. Erica is furious when she learns that Brandon's punishment would simply be a suspension and counseling, and she questions Brandon's mother if he is a psycho. Tori defends Brandon and argues with her for targeting a kid. She offers a sincere apology for Caitlin's injury before leaving. As Tori and Kyle leave with Brandon, he gives Erica a sinister look. At home, Tori confesses to Kyle about the night Brandon sleepwalked. Kyle is concerned about Brandon's attraction to the trapdoor. He reminds her that Brandon is not a human and says that he will do more damage. Meanwhile, Brandon is in bed and gets a revelation about the whispers. He steps outside in the rain and walks towards the barn. Tori is searching for an explanation for Brandon's past when she notices a red light through the window. She goes to the barn and sees Brandon floating above the flashing red light. She panics and leaps to catch him, but he falls and hurts himself on the alien ship. Tori consoles Brandon after seeing his wounds. He questions her about who he is, and she decides to confess to him about their attempts to have a child and that he came on an alien ship. Upset by their lies, Brandon gets away from her and runs outside while screaming angrily. He hears the whispers, "Take the world." Brandon then enters Caitlin's room. She is scared even when he apologizes by giving her flowers. He tells her not to be afraid, as she is one of the only people who knows that he is special. She tells him that her mother has forbidden her from speaking to him. He assures her that he'll take care of it. Erica is cleaning up in the diner when she suddenly notices symbols drawn on the windows. She calls Gary, thinking it's a practical joke. She looks at the ceiling as the light flickers crazily. The glass breaks, and a shard stabs her in the eye. She pulls it out painfully, leaving blood all over the floor. Blood is blocking Erica's vision as she looks for the culprit. She takes a baseball bat out of her bag and swings it around to scare him away. She then locks herself inside the freezer out of fear for her life. A hot laser splits the metal door and yanks it open. Erica notices a boy with terrible red eyes who is hiding behind a mask, which then kills her. Anxious after last night, Tori and Kyle wait for Brandon at breakfast. They are relieved to see Brandon calm and finally accepting his situation when he shows up. When the sheriff discovers something on the windows of the diner, he begins to look into Erica's disappearance. He knocks the glass over and finds a strange symbol. Marilee questions Brandon about his adoption during his counseling session. After discovering Brandon's origins, she discovers that he has begun to distinguish himself as a superior entity. She urges Brandon to be honest after noticing his lack of regret for Caitlin. Although she is part of the family, she takes her job seriously and will give the sheriff a report. Brandon shakes his head angrily at this. Kyle and his buddies discuss Erica's death in a bar. EJ makes a remark about Brandon due to the encounter with Caitlin, but when rebuked, he apologizes. Kyle is concerned that Brandon is turning into a monster, but Noah reassures him that every child is a monster before they leave home. Marilee is alone at home when Brandon visits her. He suggests her not to give the report to sheriff, or it won't be good for her, but Marilee refuses and firmly requests him to leave. He gives her a frightening smile before she closes the door. Marilee then texts Noah. She is unaware of Brandon, who is lurking in the shadows behind her wearing a crimson mask. While she sleeps, Brandon slips into her room but hears Noah arriving home. Noah brushes his teeth in the bathroom and doesn't notice that Brandon is standing behind him. However, Noah notices when someone walks into his closet. As soon as he turns on the light and notices Brandon wearing a mask, he jumps. Noah reprimands him and drags him to his truck outside. Noah doesn't listen to him despite Brandon's warning not to tell anything to his parents. He moves to force Brandon inside the truck. As Noah gets into the driver's seat, the light flickers when he doesn't notice him there. As Brandon is putting on his mask, Noah grabs him, but laser vision shoots him down. Noah gets scared when Brandon vanishes into the night. He quickly gets into his car and drives away. After some time, Brandon hits his truck. and Noah loses control. The car breaks down, and Noah makes a final attempt to start it. He turns the headlights on and sees him standing in front of his car. He flies and disappears as the lights go off and on again. Brandon then raises his truck into the air and drops it on the ground. The truck is fully destroyed. Noah's jaw hits the steering wheel, and his jaw gets dislocated. Brandon writes a symbol on the road with Noah's blood. Kyle waits while Tori calls merrily in a panic because Brandon hasn't returned home yet. Brandon enters the room with his hands covering his shirt. Tori hugs him and asks him what happened. He lies while acting innocent and says that a football match resulted in bullying. When Brandon goes to his room, Tori and Kyle are aware that he was lying. They're at a loss because it's difficult for them to find a specialist for their alien son. Kyle holds themselves responsible for Brandon's upbringing because he wasn't supposed to be a human. Kyle experiences a scary nightmare about his past. He is taken back to the forest where they first discovered Brandon. Tori holds a baby bleeding upon her when she offers it to him. He sees the monster Brandon has in her hands. He wakes up when Marilee calls them. They then visit the hospital to console Marilee, who is upset at Noah's death. She expresses concern about Brandon, and the couple is stunned to find that he had visited her before. When they speak to Brandon in the morning, they are surprised by his lack of concern for Noah's death. Tori politely asks him if he knows anything about Noah's death. Brandon lies to them once again. Kyle gets enraged at Brandon knowing that their son is a monster who killed his friend. Kyle pushes Brandon, who doesn't take it well, into a cabinet. Tori stops the fight and tells Brandon to go to his room. Kyle thinks Brandon has a good reason for removing his shirt. While taking a shower, he checks Brandon's room and discovers that it is stained with blood. He hides the shirt just in time from Brandon and then apologizes for his actions. Kyle shows her proof of Brandon's crime, but she argues that he is merely a child. He gets frustrated and says that he is not their son. She is upset by his words and walks away. The sheriff finds the same symbol that he found in Erica's case while investigating Noah's accident. Kyle remembers his love for his son as he looks at Brandon's baby trinkets. In order to restore their relationship and show his love for Brandon, he tells Tori that he will take her camping. Kyle then wraps his arms around Tori to relieve her. The early morning, Kyle and Brandon's departure was silent and tense. To inquire about Brandon, the sheriff comes to Tori. The symbol at Noah's crash is depicted in a photo that he gives her, and he says that Brandon Breyer is the subject since the symbol is made up of two bees. Tori pretends to be innocent, but the sheriff is aware of the truth. When she asks him to go, the sheriff warns her that he's going to come back. She rushes to Brandon's room, where she discovers that his notebook is filled with the same symbols. She looks through it and is shocked to find sketches of Noah's and Erica's deaths. As Kyle and Brandon walk through the woods, while Brandon is distracted, Kyle lifts his rifle and aims for Brandon. He sheds tears as he shoots Brandon in the head. Brandon is unharmed, and he stands up while giving him a shocked look. When Kyle reloads his gun out of fear, Brandon disappears. He flees, but Brandon swiftly catches him and knocks him down. Brandon hesitates for a moment, but then shoots laser beams at his head while he begs for his life. Tori calls Kyle's number in desperation but hears Brandon on the other end. Despite Brandon telling her right up front that Kyle had died, she denies this and then asks about his location. He tells her he is home and crushes Kyle's phone. Tori screams as Brandon starts to wreck their house. She then dials 911 for help. The sheriff and his constable arrive on the scene, where the Breyer residence is completely destroyed. Brandon kills the sheriff when Tori tries to run to him for help. Tori is told to hide by the constable. The constable calls for assistance, but interference occurs. Brandon appears behind the constable as she enters the room. He throws her multiple times and finally through a glass door. Her severely wounded body is bleeding on the floor in front of Tori, who is hiding under the bed. Brandon is looking for Tori. When he goes outside the room, she gets out of the bed. When he comes in the room again, Tori is already dangling outside the window. Tori falls and hurts her hand. This reminds her of Brandon's prior injury. She knows what to do and hurries to the barn while Brandon follows. When she goes to the trapdoor and checks the ship, it begins to glow. Behind her, when the light reveals Erica's mutilated body, Tori cries upon seeing her. She makes a choice, tears a piece of metal from the spacecraft, and tucks it away in her back pocket. Tori calls Brandon and uses whistles to entice him to play their game. When Brandon sees her, Tori cautiously moves closer to him and tries to show the good side of him. When Brandon hugs her, she raises her arm to kill her son with the metal shard, but Brandon stops her. Tori's betrayal hurts Brandon, who screams in fury. He flies through the roof of the barn while carrying Tori in his arms. As they soar higher and higher, she is very wounded. Tori touches her son's face for the last time. Brandon then lets go of her, allowing her to fall to her death. In order to hide his murders at the Breyer residence, Brandon spots a plane out in the distance. The next morning, a TV crew reports on the inexplicable plane crash that left Brandon as the only survivor. He plays innocent while eating a cookie, and the movie ends. To watch more movie recaps like this, be sure to subscribe and turn the notifications on. Thanks for watching. Till then, watch how this man saves his daughter by deleting his own memory. See you there. Goodbye.